I am now joined by New Hampshire's own Corey Lewandowski. Good to see you. Obviously, you're the former campaign manager for Donald Trump. Still a good friend of his, and imagine takes quite a bit of advice from you from time to time. How do you think everything's going 2 days now from the election?
Look, I think what you have is you've got an electorate that is now energized, right? We're just a short period away from people going to vote in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is such a special place. You hear about all these early voting locations in North Carolina and Florida, and everyone is measuring, you know, is it up to par? Does it measure where we were 4 years ago or 8 years ago? New Hampshire's so special. It's an election day like everywhere else should be. You show up, you vote on election day, and I think right now, if you look at it, the momentum is with Donald Trump, and what you've seen recently in the last week or so is the polls are breaking his way. The Real Clear Politics average is saying that he has a slight lead in most cases right now. That's where you want to be going into Election Day.
Is there anything left that could hurt him? I mean, he's pretty much absorbed a lot of it by his own, doing. But from the videos and the statements, what more could possibly happen? I mean, he is who he is at this point, right? I mean,
I think the American people have had their education on both of these candidates, and what they have to fundamentally decide is, do they want to keep Washington going in the same direction it's been for 30 years, which has been a failure for both Republicans and Democrats? Or do they want to make a fundamental and wholesale change? Put someone into Washington who has no government experience, and I think the American people think that's a plus. And someone who's not beholden to special interests, someone who's been willing to invest his own money into this campaign, tens of millions of dollars, to say, I don't want special interest money, I want to go and work for the American people. And if the country, if you look at the track, they say, is the country on the right track or the wrong track? More than 50% of the people are saying it's on the wrong track. So let's put the country back on the right track. If they do that, then they'll vote for Donald Trump for president.
Obviously, the Clinton campaign has been hammering away at his temperament and the things that he said. But now they're really kind of talking about, as commander-in-chief, would he keep us safe, and can he be trusted not to fly off the handle and get us into a fix that we can't get out of? You know him. What do we not know about him?
Look, I think what you don't see about Donald Trump is the empathy side, which he displays in private all the time. He's a very funny guy, actually, when you're one-on-one with him. Just the ability to, but more importantly, he's a person who takes a lot of advice before a major decision is made. And we saw this, I saw it firsthand throughout the entire campaign. If I had a recommendation on something, he would call 10 or 12 or 15 other people who he trusted to make sure that recommendation was a good one, it was strategic, it was smart, and then ultimately, we're hiring a person to make the final decision. But you want to have that person have the best people around him. And if you look at the first hire he has made in this campaign, Mike Pence. Amazing guy, done great work as the vice presidential candidate in New Hampshire on Sunday, and he's a type of vice president that would be giving advice to Donald Trump.
Well, the first hire was actually you, if you want to get technical about that. But since you departed from the campaign, has there been some times where you're seeing, things unfold, whether it's behind the scenes or strategy, things along those lines, where you said, "Ugh, man, I wish I was still running things"? Yeah,
of course. When you walk away from, what is the most historic campaign in the history of our country, potentially, there's that kind of buyer's remorse. You always wish you were still there. But I think the strategy, particularly under the leadership now, and I cannot praise Steve Bannon, Kellyanne Conway, and Dave Bossie, kind of the leadership of that campaign, enough right now. They have really done a good job of making sure, one, Donald Trump is on message. Number two, my philosophy, and it's always been the case, you have to let Trump be Trump. He has tapped into something that the American people have wanted for a long time, which is bypass the mainstream media, tell your message, and bring change to Washington.
Yeah, he's hammered away on the media pretty good these days. But, when people go behind the curtain, are you convinced? I mean, he talks a lot about the beneath the surface energy that's going to be there, and it's going to reveal itself on Election Day. Polls are what they are. How convinced are you that there is this spiral of silence, as it's been known?
Look, I think there's people out there that have decided that they don't want to publicly state that they're supporting Donald Trump. We saw some of this in the primaries. We saw the dominance that Donald Trump had here in the state of New Hampshire in the primary. Also down in South Carolina, down in Nevada. In Florida, a week out in Florida, there was a public poll that came out that said he was up 3 points. He won by 20. When you're doing polling, there's two different ways to do it. You can do a phone poll, which is just kind of the touch button, and when you see those polls, Donald Trump does much better. I think here in the Granite State and places like Pennsylvania, you're going to see a group of people that come out that have not said publicly they're supporting him, but are going to show up on Election Day.
A lot of people are feeling that way. We have about a minute to go. His final campaign event, it appears, we'll see what happens, this thing's fluid, will be in New Hampshire. Was that something that was important to him, or was that something that you convinced him to do?
Look,
A little
both.
both.
A little both. Okay, look, I don't want to overstate this, but New Hampshire's been such an important state to Donald Trump. It is the place that he launched his campaign, the first win and a big win in a place where many people said he wasn't going to be competitive. He won. He's been to New Hampshire, I think, 12 or 13 or 14 times in the general election. It shows the level of commitment he has here. And look, if you remember the night before the primary, he did a big event at the Verizon Center. It was packed out. It was a snowstorm. It was fantastic. And it worked very well on primary night. I hope to have the same success on the night before the election.
And for you personally, you got any plans either way?
I'm going to vote for Trump on election
No, I
day.
meant after. Are you going to write a book or what?
I don't know. I mean, look, I don't think so. What I want to see is a big turnout on election day. I hope that we have the record turnout. I hope more people come out than ever, and I hope they support Donald Trump in New Hampshire.
All right. Well, it must have been quite a ride for you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Good to see you.